Yep.
Adinenu, Reinu Rabbeinu, Melech HaMashiach. Right.
Sure. Like,
So the past few shiurim was number one was that the Rebbe Malchus is telling us as a clear statement that he is not going to pass away. I just heard another sikha today, a video of the sikha of Chav Zayin, Marches von Tavshim Memches, Ham Tavshim Beis. And the Rebbe says this thing over and over again, the shamis and bodies, and the whole explanation of the shaman and a body, and the shaman and a body over and over again. And that's Eretz the Tevin killing the Tikkun, a whole long explanation. And amazing, it's on video. It's on the 27th of Marchesh and Tashon Beis. And it's something that the Rebbe is constantly emphasizing. The Dvar Malchus says this week, the Rebbe says the chibur of the neshama and guf is already completely united. The Rebbe says being that this is how the sif begins. Being that the chibur, the union of the neshama and the body, is already completely united. So the Rebbe is telling us without any question that this is how it's going to be. Neshama and guf is united. Forget about anything else. It's not happening, especially obviously first and foremost by the Rebbe. It says that the neshama and guf is completely united. There's no way out. So this is for sure statement. It's another thing. The Rebbe says is publish the Sikha Beis Rabbeinu Shalom every time, like practically every Sikha after the Sikha Beis Rabbeinu Shalom came out, which was Chav Cheshvan. Practically every Sikha. This week's Dvar Malchus is mentioned on a footnote at the end of the Sikha, and it's almost every Sikha. The Rebbe says that mentions the Sikha Beis Rabbeinu Shalom, which is very unique because. Just to understand how unique is the fact that the Rebbe should just keep mentioning it over and over again and citing it over and over again. We could take an example from two other examples. Okay, we understand what the Rebbe is pushing us, pushing. The Sikha Beis Rabbeinu Shalom, the whole idea of Beis Rabbeinu Shalom, to my knowledge, was never in my knowledge, which my knowledge is limited. It was not mentioned at any time before this. Something that the Rebbe says they started mentioning specifically in this most recent time. And the Rebbe says emphasizing over there that this is the place of Nasi Adar. And the Rebbe says that keeps telling us to look at that sikha. So two examples to show how much this is emphasized is the sikha of Dvar Malchus that the Rebbe says they gave out. Not the sikhas, 4 sikhas in there. The Dvar Malchus booklet that the Rebbe Malchus says they gave out to every person, a man, woman, and child, on the 15th of Iyar, which was very soon after the Sikha of Chalches Nisan. So in the Dvar Malchus, that the Sikha of Achri Kedoshim, which was said right before the Dvar Malchus booklet was given out, but it was obviously published a little bit after. So the Sikha was said on the 13th of Iyar, and the booklet was given out on the 15th of Iyar, but obviously the Sikha was Muga, it took a few days. So when the Sikha came out Muga, it mentions in the footnote the Dvar Malchus booklet that the Rebbe says they gave out. It's mentioned in the Sikha of Achri Kedoshim. However, there's a number of other times throughout the Sichas and Onalf and Beis, the Dvar Malchus Sichas, that the Rebbe Malchus says that could have made a citation to it. But the Rebbe says that it doesn't. The Rebbe says that it just makes a citation to the original Sicha. For example, in Toldos, it says Tut Kufais. And it says, we're to look at the Sicha Chal Zayin, Chel Chal Zayin, which that's one of the Sichas in the booklet. So the Rebbe says there could have been a note to look at the booklet. The Rebbe says doesn't say that. The Rebbe says look at the original Sikha, and that's not the only time. There's a lot of other times. There's in the Sikha of Terech Hadashim Iti Teitze, being in Terech Hadashim Iti Teitze, there's a whole thing over there about the Ari Miklat, why the Rambam brings a proof from Ari Miklat, and there's a footnote over there to look at the Lakutei Sichos of Shoftim, Tavshim, and Tes, if I'm not mistaken. Now that Sikha, that's the second Sikha in the booklet that the Rambam says they gave out. But the Rambam says it does not tell you to look at the booklet that the Rambam says that they gave out. But the Rambam says, look at the Sikha and look at the Sikhas. That's one example. So, in other words, emphasizing something, you see from here that the Rambam says that just mentions it once. Now, another thing which is even much more of a boilet than the Dvar Malchus booklet in a certain way, that Baruch Hashem, I noticed a very interesting thing. For Yud Aleph Nisan Tafshin Aleph came out an amazing sikha on a hadron on the four Mesachtas of Banayich. Rafes, Nazir, Yivamis, and Krisis. It's an amazing sikha. There's a hadron that came out for the Rambam on his 90th birthday. And that sikha is not cited once in any of the sikhas of Dvar Malchus, not even in the sikha of Yud Aleph Nisan, which in the sikha of Yud Aleph Nisan, Tafshin Aleph, the Rambam says that talks about the pasuk L'chol Banayich L'modei Hashem, which that's what this whole hadron is about. And the hadron came out for Yud Aleph Nisan. It came out not on Yud Aleph Nisan, actually came out on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It came out like a week and a half before. So it would have made very perfect sense that in the Sikha of Yud Aleph Nisan, when the Rambam is speaking about this Indian of B'chol B'nayich L'modei Hashem, which that's what the whole hadron is about, it would have made sense that in the footnote it would say, look at the hadron that was printed just now on honor of Yud Aleph Nisan. But it's not mentioned in that footnote. And this pasuk, L'chol Banayich L'modei Hashem, which I found in a letter in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, that the pasuk L'chol Banayich L'modei Hashem is a pasuk referring to the time of the Gula. And it's something that the Rambam says that L'chol Banayich L'modei Hashem, the Rambam says that mentions this pasuk a lot in the Sichos of Dvar Malchus. It's an example in Emor, if I'm not mistaken. There's a whole footnote over there about it. I'll take an L'chol Banayich. There's a whole thing about Chol V'nayich, but the pasuk Chol V'nayich L'modei Hashem is mentioned a number of times in Dvar Malchus, but not once is there a citation to that sikha of a hadron of a Chol V'nayich. Ad kedei kach, I think a lot of people don't even know this hadron exists. It's printed, but I don't know, everyone knows it exists before. It's not cited once in all the sikhs in the Malchus base. Even in the sikha would be most matim, like Al-Facha is like the Dvar Malchus booklet that the Rambam says the put. At least in the sikha that was said right before it was given out. And over here, the sikha that was said that day, Yud Aleph Nisan, and the Rambam says they actually spoke about this in L'chol Banayich L'modei Hashem. There's no citation at all to that hadron. So you see that when the Rambam says that is making a citation to something, there's obviously a significant reason. And the Rambam says that makes the citation to Beis Rabbeinu Shel and mentions the idea of Beis Rabbeinu Shel and cites the kuntris Beis Rabbeinu Shel over and over and over again. It's all practically in every sikha after it was given out, it was printed. After Chok Machash, it's practically in every sikha. The Rambam says that he's keep pushing this Indian of Beis Rabbeinu Shel over and over again. We have to know this is the bayit, this is the makim kavua. The Rambam says this is the set places in Asiyah Adar. So it just being that the past few shiurim, one was that the Rambam says is telling us that this it's going to be. The Rambam says it's going to be alive, Pshuta, and we see in the way that we could see at the moment. We could see it when the Rambam says that comes into our brain, comes into a tefillah, you see it. It's in not the way that we want to see it. We want to see it with our own eyes. The Rambam says that when we see that the Rambam says it's coming in, it's obvious, it's felt. And this is a davar vados that the Rambam says there is makom kavod. That's where he is, and that's what the Rambam says there is, and the Shalom go forever. Okay, and then we had that this was a psak in Rabbanim, and then the last week's share was an explanation how we could see that number one, it's impossible otherwise. It can't be that all the Giluyim in the world, these amazing things we have, because we're in this stage of Yemais Mashiach, there must be Mashiach in the world for there to be all this. And we said it's like the heart that's giving chayes to the whole body, and there must be the heart there. And then that the time is, that we ended the last year, is that it's time to be able to see the Nasi Hadar. Last year was our Rosh Chodesh Kislev. It was in connection with Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the union is to see the Nasi Hadar. So today, we wanted to, with Hashem's help, to dedicate to hopefully getting into, especially the Dvar Malchus of this week, is the first time that the Rebbe Malchus says, the only thing left is to open our eyes. It's the first time in the Dvar Malchus of Vayetze that the Rebbe Malchus says, and then on our Yichos, that what's left is to open our eyes. And the Rebbe Malchus says the way to do it is Torah mitzvahs and listening to instructions of the Nasi Hadar. And there's examples there. Just another example, just to hire one more point in what we were saying before. The Rebbe Malchus says, to my knowledge, in the Sichos of Dvar Malchus, does not push us to learn a certain Rebbe's Torah. For the most part, besides for like a big emphasis on learning a certain Rebbe's Torah is the Mittel Rebbe. That you have in the Sicha of Lechacha. I think it's in the Muga, it's not so clear, but in the Bilti Muga, and the Sicha, it says in the footnote to look at the Sicha of Ches Cheshvan. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Sicha of Ches Cheshvan, there's an emphasis on learning the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus. And especially in this Dvar Malchus. So Vayetze, there's a Hadgasha that almost says to learn the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus. The other Rabbeim, to my knowledge, like specifically to learn a certain Rebbe's Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe, to my knowledge, doesn't mention. The Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek doesn't mention to learn the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek's Chassidus, to my recollection, at least at the moment. And not the Rebbe Marash, for sure not, to my recollection, not the Rebbe Rashab, not specifically to learn the Rebbe Rashab's Chassidus. The Rebbe Yatz, if I'm not mistaken, in Boy, there's an emphasis on learning the Torah of the Rebbe Yatz. I don't know if it's specifically the Chassidus of the Rebbe Yatz. The emphasis on learning a certain Rebbe's Chassidus, specifically the Rebbe Yatz's Chassidus. And obviously, it says that my mom Kudisich is Nasi Hadar. That's in reference to learning on Tazri Mitzvah. But Mitzvah learning specifically a certain Rebbe's Chassidus. There's an emphasis on learning the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus in the Sichos of Dvar Malchus. And in the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus, there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that Mashiach is greater than Moshe and Eliyahu, and that he's going to have, Mashiach is not going to pass away and not be buried. He's going to have Chaim Mitzrayim. Specifically in the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus, it's in a number of places.
Also, the Chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe that says that they were living with Mashiach.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. After the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidim. Because they were learning the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidus.
Ah, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So that's another thing that the Rebbe is telling us. It's in the Kudisich of Chukas Tavshan Al. The Rebbe says that brings the Jewish Chassid of the Mittel Rebbe about Mashiach being higher than Eliyahu Navi. And Mashiach remains as an Hashem V'Guf. Kudisich of Chukas Tavshan Al, note 28. And in general, this is in the Maimar, the Mittel Rebbe, in a number of places. It's in Drusha Chasana, it's in I don't remember offhand, but it's in a number of places in the Mittel Rebbe says. But over there in Drusha Chasana, it's mentioned in Kudisich of Chukas Tavshan Al. And anyway, getting back to what we were saying. So the goal is that we need to get out of this. We can't continue in a state, as much as we're going to explain it and explain that this is the fact that the Rebbe says that there's a life physically, and that the Rebbe says that there's continuing all those activities, and it's in a Malchus, and we can have a lot of hasvaris as to why this has to be this way, and why it is this way, and why. But the fact is that we need to get out of this situation. We have to have already the schus that the Rebbe says, the emphasizes in a number of sichos on Fukas and Emar, that is the Indian of seeing the Nasi Hadar. It's the Indian of seeing the Or Parnov. The
Especially the Melech, right? Well, it's the same thing. But yeah.
So what's the way to get out of this? So there's a number of things that we could possibly say. In general, the Rebbe Malchus says that we did everything and there's no explanation at all for the uphold of the Gula. So there is no explanation. There's nothing we could say that's holding up the Gula. And every moment it's a chakaloi, and we know that there's this time. Okay, it's something that's brought in the Medrash. Rashi explains that this is Pshutei Shel Mikra, relatively in two places in Daniel, that there's going to be a time that Mashiach is first, he's revealed, and then there's going to be a time that we're not going to see him, and then he's going to be revealed again. So the Metzias is as thus, that this is already told to us, this is what's going to happen. And the Metzias is it's happening. We had the Shana Shemelech HaMashiach Nigla Boi. The Rabbi Malchus says that said that the year Tafshan Nun Aleph is the year that Mashiach is revealed. And then it escalated. It got higher, greater and greater, the revelation of Melech HaMashiach. Until Nun Gimel, that it became with Galil Chola Ilan, that the Rebbe Shlita is Melech HaMashiach. So it escalated greater and greater. And then we have this time that we're in a state of nichsa, that we don't see Melech HaMashiach with our eyes. It's a nichsa, is it that the problem is with us? That more it's us that we have a problem. That's technically the nichsa. It's exactly how to put it. The Metzias is the Mashiach we don't see at the moment. So what's the key to see the Rebbe Malchus to see the Rebbe Malchus to take on Mamash? So there's these ideas that come, that the Rebbe Malchus they came and telling us, and these are novel ideas that were not mentioned. And polishing the buttons is something the Rebbe Ayat said. Rebbe Ayat had this novel idea that you need to polish the buttons. This Indian of polishing the buttons, the Rebbe says over and over again, and also the Pachim Kitanim. Then the Rebbe says we finished polishing the buttons.
When does the Rebbe Malchus first say that?
So in my knowledge, it's like Tavshim Ches, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, like because at the end of Tavshim Zayin, the Rebbe Malchus says it's like we're almost finished polishing, and if I'm not mistaken, the beginning of stating that the buttons are polished raised in Tavshim Ches, if I'm not mistaken. So that is something that's very from the Rebbe Ayat. The idea of Hinei Zeba, it's a pasuk. This is the nevuah of the Rebbe Malchus, and the Rebbe Malchus is using the lashon pasuk. Hinei Zeba is a pasuk. We say it in Kiddush Levana. Kol Daidi Hinei Zeba. And the Rebbe is always mitzayin to that pasuk. That's what's a pasuk. Higias man guaschem is the lashon of a medrash. And the Rebbe says it is coming and telling us that this is the Metzias, this medrash is being mukuyim. The Indian of opening up our eyes, it's not written to my knowledge. It's not something the Rabbeim said. It's not something that the Rebbe said before this. To my knowledge, at least, it's a new Indian, opening up your eyes. Now the Rebbe Malchus says that brings a medrash in the Dvar Malchus of Ekev that says that in the Gula, the first that will be healed among all the people that need to be healed are those that are blind. And it's a pasuk that says, "Az tipakachna inei oivim." Then it will be open the eyes of the blind. So there is a nevuah of opening our eyes in reference to the Gula. But it's technically this is more a novel idea of the Rebbe Malchus. And simply put, that's the closest you could get to the Gula. that the Gula is already here, but you don't see it. That's the closest you could get to having something but not having it. So we're the closest possible to actually being in the Gula Mitzvah Shlema that it's already technically here, but we don't see it. Which is, that itself is a chisaron hachi gadol, because the Indian of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema is shleimus and amitius. And if you don't
Gilui.
and gilui, Gula is the Alma says right, there's Moshe Gilui, Gula is Moshe Gilui. So obviously that's what it says at the end of this week's Dvar Malchus, the Gilui of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Obviously, without the Gilui, it's not what we need. What's going to help us? So, the Dvar Malchus says in the Sikha, how do you get to have the eyes open? The Malchus says a list, and the list is Torah mitzvahs and keeping the Hayros Rabbeim, including, it doesn't say especially, it's including the Hayra to learn in Yanim Shechel. But it just says including. You have to remember that the Malchus is telling us technically that it's very simple in a certain way. We have to know our goal at the moment is seeing the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, and the Derech Manelo, we're going to see the Malchus. Actually, that's it. And the way to get to it is through Torah mitzvahs and listening to the rights of the Rabbein. So that's technically simple. Just we have to know what we're trying to accomplish. That's technically simple. There's things maybe that we could put an emphasis on, okay, and that maybe have more of a clear connection to specifically to the fact that the Rebbe says that at the moment we don't see, and changing that. What? Because we know everything that by the Eibush is Midah Keneged Midah. I just saw recently that that's the Indian of Havayi Tzilcha. It's in the Rebbe says this capital this year, that Havayi Tzilcha is everything is Midah Keneged Midah. That the Eibush is your tzil. In other words, what you do, the Eibush there reciprocates. Is that the right one? Reciprocates the same way. So what's the Indian of what in our Avodas Hashem is al derech dugmas, the Indian of that could eliminate the fact, because it maybe doesn't have to be zet tali v'zet. I had a dream once with Hashem's help, an amazing dream, that the way it's going to be, this was my dream. Obviously, it doesn't have to be this way, and let's hope it doesn't be this way. Let's see the Rabbi Malchus says that right now with bring the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. I had a dream, which the dream would give a possibility that we would see the Rabbi Malchus says even before the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, but in a gradual way, stage by stage. First, a little bit like the moon. You see a little bit, and you see more and more. I had a dream like that. Al derech l'dugma, something like the moon. At first, we saw the Rabbi Malchus says that everyone saw, the whole 770 Beis Yisrael saw the Rabbi Malchus says that for a minute by a tefillah, and then the next day they saw for a few minutes. Then the next day for the whole tefillah, and then the next day they saw the Rabbi says when the Rabbi says coming in. Like it was gradual. That's how I had such a video. And it started with us being 100% certain. The Chiddush of the dream was that when we all saw the Rabbi says that for that minute, we weren't going out of, so to say, our kelim. We weren't overwhelmed. This is the Dvar Pasha. The Rabbi says there's there. Obviously, the Rabbi says there's there. And the fact that I'm seeing this is the Dvar Pasha. Yeah. And it was a gradual thing. It was gradual. Even though it was Pasha to us, it still wasn't a gradual way. But that was the dream I had. Now that would mean, that the Gula Mitzvah Shlema is not totally in us seeing the Rabbi says, which is technically obvious. It doesn't have to be. Why do we saw the Rabbi says 30 years ago? Why can't we see the Rabbi says now? So it doesn't mean that it has to be totally. So let's see if there's a way that could there could be midah kineged midah to eliminate this Helena Hester that we don't see on our own eyes. They're all consistent. So in general, it says, right? It says in Hayomim that in order to give a remedy, you have to know what the first step for the remedy is to know what the problem was in the first place. Once you fix the original problem, then you could get the remedy. So it's hard to say there's any problem. It's hard to say anything negative because the Dvar Malchus is very positive. So it's very hard to say anything. But being that we need to get out of this state, and it's enough is enough. How long are we going to go like this? That we don't see the Nasi Adar. The Gula Mitzvah Shalem in the Beis HaMikdash we certainly want. But we need to see the Rebbe. Malcolm says that we need to see the Nasi Adar already. So, Hashkacha brought this, a number of things recently. There's a story that I always was in my mind, and I never understood the story. And then recently I saw in the Sefer on Lekutei Levi Yitzchak from the Rambam says the Teres Nachum Teres Levi Yitzchak on Parshas Sisa. I saw an amazing Zayar and the explanation of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and an explanation of the Rambam says on it, and that helped me understand maybe to some degree the story, which maybe this is one of the things, and certainly it's an Indian and Torah mitzvahs, and maybe mitzvah the Indian and mitzvah kineged mitzvah. Let's hope it'll help us, help in this Indian. And it's obviously in Yanim Mashiach. Let's hope that we'll say over at least the Indian. Hopefully it'll help. Already just saying it should help. Okay, because it's some amazing thing. Even what the Rambam says in that psicha, I was amazed. So let's see what it says. It says so it says like this, and then this, in my possibly understanding, will explain a story that I always connected to the fact that the moment we don't see the Rebbe Malchus says that, and it doesn't mean Chas v'Shalom that the Rebbe Malchus says that is not here. Okay, so we'll start with the story because the story is a very interesting one, and the story, I never understood a number of points in it, and I think this Zohar and this beer of the Rambam says they will maybe explain it to us and maybe will give us as far as what's going on in a certain way. Okay, so the story is like this: the Ramban, the Ramban is very, very much into Kabbalah. We have a lot of Kabbalah that's in the Pirush of the Ramban on the Torah, and in general, it's known that the Ramban is Indian as Kabbalah. So the story I read, it's published in a book called the Ramban, printed by CIS, and over there's a story of how the Ramban started learning Kabbalah. So originally, the Ramban, he did not want to learn Kabbalah, and his mentor really wanted him to learn Kabbalah, but he didn't want to. He felt he's not the right person for it. He's not on the level. So one day, this is how the story goes. One day, the teacher, if I'm not mistaken, his mentor, if I'm not mistaken, this is what happened. If I'm not mistaken, I didn't see the story in a long time, but if I'm not mistaken, this is what happened. One day, his mentor, and actually, this Zohar is practically saying this. I was amazed when I saw the Zohar. So what does it say? It says his mentor one day, was deep in his thoughts, and he ended up in the middle of the forest. This is how the story goes. His mentor was deep in his thoughts. He ended up in the middle of the forest. He ended up, if I remember correctly, among thieves and zaynas. Okay, it was like a whole middle of the forest, terrible situation over there. Came the police and took all of them as prisoners, including they saw him standing there. They took him also. He was deep in his thought. He didn't know what was going on, but he ended up in the middle of this place in the middle of nowhere, and there was no good people there. Okay, they took him among the prisoners, and they sentenced all the prisoners to death, including the Ramban's mentor. The Ramban heard about this and he got very, very shocked and very sad. And he went to visit his mentor in prison. This was Thursday, and they were supposed to all be burnt at the stake on Friday, on Erev Shabbos. His mentor tells him, prepare a place for me at your Shabbos table tomorrow night. So he's very happy. He's gonna have his mentor as his guest, but he doesn't know how it's possible because his mentor is in prison and is supposed to be burned at the stake the next day before Shabbos. So, but he did what he was told. The next day, he saw his mentor being burned at the stake with all the other criminals. So he was all, I don't know how they wrote the story, but he was all confused maybe, whatever. He didn't know what to do, but he had already, his mentor had told him to prepare a place for him at the Friday night table. Comes Friday night, and he hears a knock at the door. Who is it? His mentor is there. What happened? So it says like this. It says that his mentor, using Chachmas HaKabbalah, made a goylem that looked exactly like him, and he hid somewhere in the prison, and he sent the goylem to be burnt at the stake, and he escaped.
Like Esther and Ahasuerus, right?
Something. Oh, there's okay.
Yeah.
So that's how the story goes. Now, through this story, that got the Ramban to learn Kabbalah. Now, I honestly, I didn't understand. I didn't see the story in a long time, so maybe there's more details there that make it more understood. I didn't understand why it had to be in this whole funny story. Why do you have to have this whole interesting story in order to get the Ramban to learn Kabbalah? I did not understand it. I was wondering why. I knew the story is an amazing story. And it could be, I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. It could be that's what happened when everyone thought that they saw the Dvar Malchus in a state that we are certain is not the case. So I always thought you could say that might have happened.
Interesting.
We don't.
That's a very simple. I mean, it's a very good explanation.
Yeah. So
it's very possible,
I recently told this to someone, and recently it bothered me very much. What's the whole idea behind the story? There has to be something behind the story. The story is not a story, and why it had to be a whole funny way of getting the Ramban to learn Kabbalah? And the Ramban is relatively, if we think about it, it seems, I don't know so much the history so well, but the Ramban is one of the first that was Megala Kabbalah to the world. The Arizal was later on, and the first, so it's like the beginning of the Gilui of loss of the Talmid Torah. So the Ramban is a very, very fundamental stage in the Gilui of Pnimiyas Torah. So this story has to have certainly a deep connection to the fact that he's a very fundamental stage in the Gilui of Pnimiyas Torah. And I'm not going to say I know for sure, but I saw this amazing Zoyar with a beer of Levi Yitzchak and a beer of the Dvar Malchus. He rented in the Sefer of Teres Nachum, Teres Levi Yitzchak on Shmois, and it's on Parshas Sisa. So it says like this in the Zohar. The Zohar says a whole long explanation with a mashal of a king and his son. And the Zohar says a whole long explanation of the difference between Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Gula from Babel, and then it mentions how it's going to be in the Gula Asida. Listen, you have to be quiet, okay? You ate who knows how much, and it's not right. You just have to keep quiet right now. So, what does it say there? It says, and again, I'm saying this because it's written, and it's in Yom Shechugol. That's what inspired me to even look at it. And although it's not such a positive thing in a way, but we need to get out of this. And being it's in Yom Shechugol, and the Malchus is they're telling us to learn and teach in Yom Shechugol. And hopefully this could be, it's an Indian and Torah mitzvah. Let's hope it'll help. We can't say this is a something holding it up, and we can't say this is, this is the key. I don't know, but it's certainly in Indian that the Malchus themselves says in the Sikha, this is what is holding up the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. In the Sikha, in that Sikha over there, the Malchus says that this is holding up the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Le'es ata, I have never seen such a lashon. That the Malchus that says what is that this following thing is holding up the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. I never saw such a lashon. So this itself is an amazing thing that the Rambam says is telling us a key to the Beis Hamikdash being built. So certainly it's an important thing. Is it something that we could say now it's holding it up? Because the Rambam said there's nothing holding it up anymore. So we can't say it's holding it up anymore, but it's certainly something important and something very negea, certainly. So what is it? So the Zohar says like this. The Zohar says that there's a difference between Yitzias Mitzrayim and the Gula from Babel. Okay, Yitzias Mitzrayim was with great miracles. We went out with amazing miracles. Hashem appeared. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. That's a lashon. Sarah. Abraham himself took us out, and we saw it in a way that was open. How did we see Hashem took us out? Because there were Nisim Galuyim. We saw open miracles when we left Mitzrayim. We saw clearly Hashem is taking us out of Mitzrayim. That when we went out of Golus Vavil, it was not like this at all. There were no Nisim. There was no Nisim at all. And we didn't see that. Yeah, we didn't see that Hashem is taking us out of Golus Vavil. So the Zohar explains this with a very interesting mashal, a very, very amazing mashal. And how it's quoted in the Sefer I mentioned, it's not quoting the whole thing because there's a lot of it's like a little bit half quoted, but the mashal is there. So what's a mashal? The mashal is like this. If I remember correctly, and you can see it there, the title is Achar Sayamin. The title of this essay in there is called Achar Sayam. It's on Parshas Sisa. It's on the Zohar on Parshas Sisa. So it says like this: that it's a mashal to a king that had a son, and I didn't understand exactly why the son was in a state of Mitzrayim, but it seemed like he wasn't acting so good, so he was in a state of Mitzrayim. But his father came and he took him out of this. He did something wrong, so he was not in a good state. His father came and took him back home. Okay, then what happened was the next time, his son messed up again. And this time his son messed up with non-Jewish women in a place of Zainas. He got himself all, he got his yakre, his glory got all disgraced. He got all dirty in this place. And the mother started crying for her son. That Hayatach, her son, is stuck in this disgusting place. And the father, the king, said, that for you, I'm going to go get him out of there. But I'm not going to get him out of there openly. It's a disgrace for me to go there and get him out. I can't go there as a king into this disgusting place. So I'm going to have to go there in a hidden way. I'm not going to go there with all my entourage. Not like when we left Mitzrayim. Hashem came with all his whole entourage, all the miracles. No. When we were in Galus Bavel, it says that the Yidden messed up. They married non-Jewish women. And it was a bad situation, marrying non-Jewish women. And it says that only when were they able to build finally the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, when Ezra separated them from their non-Jewish women. It says it clearly in the Psukim over there that the completion of the binyan of the Bayis Sheni was only once that was accomplished, when they were separated from the non-Jewish women. But the king couldn't come there in an open way. He couldn't come there in an open way. He had to come there in a hidden way because he didn't want to disgrace himself in going to such a disgusting place. Then there's a whole arukos over there that after that the king messed up another time. The king's son messed up another time. This time the father, the king said, "I'm going to throw you out with your mother," and that's what it says. So pasuk it says, because you're Averis, your mother was sent away. So don't do that. I don't know exactly who the mother. It doesn't say over there or in the Sikha or either. I don't know. I didn't see it. The mother is the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah went into Galus with us. And the Zohar says that because it was such a terrible situation, that's why the Galus is so lengthy. That's what it says in the Zohar over there. It's much longer than Galus Babel. Now at the end it says, and the way the Rebbe Malchus explains it, because the Rebbe Malchus explains it, it's a whole long thing there. The way the Rebbe Malchus explains it is that the Achar Sayom, because that's the title of this. And the way the Rebbe Malchus explains it, to be simple, because I don't remember the whole thing, the way the Rebbe Malchus explains it, because as my wife put it, that we're technically in a similar situation, but we do know that the Gula Hasidah is going to be with miracles. It says, there is going to be miracles, and still we have a state that you technically cannot have miracles. It seems, mitzad that Indian, what it says is that you can't have miracles. So the Zohar has a whole that's where it gets complicated. The whole mashal is quite an amazing mashal, and it's quite fits in with the situation. Tzias Mitzrayim was with miracles. Galus Bavel, we didn't go out with miracles. But the Gula Hasidah, the way the Zohar writes it is very complicated, and that's why there's a whole beer from Levi Yitzchak, because there's a whole beer about the Gula Hasidah. This Gula Hasidah seems to contradict what the Zohar says. On one hand, the Zohar says that it's going to be taking revenge from the Goyim. On the other hand, it says V'naru elav kol hagoyim, which means that the Goyim are going to come to the Beis Hamikdash. Hashem's not going to wipe them away, and that's where it gets complicated. The way the Rebbe Malchus explains it is that we need to teach the Goyim 7 Seinayach, but at the same time we need to be separate from them. And the more we are separate from them, the more we will influence them to keep their 7 Seinayach. And being separate from them is specifically, and this is what the statement that I was very, so to say, astounded by, the Rebbe Malchus says clearly over there that the inyan of intermarriage is what is holding up the binyan bayis hashlishi. The Rebbe Malchus says clearly what's holding up the building of the third Beis Hamikdash is intermarriage. The Rebbe Malchus says that clearly over there.
What was Sikha?
It's original because this is an essay that they wrote up. It's originally it's made up of 2 sichos. One is in the Lameds and one is in Tashim Mem Gimel. I can look it up. It's on the. It's actually in. They have a PDF of it. So there's okay, so getting back to listen, obviously looking at that sikha and learning it better, you get more understanding of that sense of it. But for the moment, giving us possibly an explanation as to the story of the Ramban, because the story of the Ramban is actually relatively very similar in this aspect. That the Ramban's mentor went to a place like the king, but he didn't go there in an open way. He went to where the king wouldn't want to go. He went right like in a hidden way. He also went in a hidden way to this place that's no good. And then there was another aspect of being hidden after here. Also, he hid himself that they shouldn't kill him, and they killed someone else instead, and he didn't actually end up dying. This is a whole hidden situation over there. Okay? Last night I saw the Sikh of Lag Ba'imah Tavshin Yud Aleph, that the Rebbe also says that the Indian of the Rashbi, because there's a story in Moed Katan, it's brought in the beginning of Dvar Malchus Re'eh. There's a story in Moed Katan about the Rashbi sending his son to someone, to Rabbi Lazar, to someone else to give him brachos, and he didn't give brachos. So then they gave him what it seemed purses. And then he came back to his father, and his father explained to him why they're really brachos. The Rebbe says in the Sikha, it's a Vilti Mugis Sikha, Lag Ba'imah Tavshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe says that why did he have to come to his father? Rabbi Lazar himself was a great guy, tzaddik, and knew a lot. But after the Rashbi, that his Indian was Gilei Pnimius Satara, which Pnimius Satara has the ability to bring out begoloi things that seem in a positive way, things that seem to be no good. Pnimius Satara has the ability to reveal what it really is, and take away the hell and this what it seems to be negative. Pnimius Satara has the ability to take that away. That's what the Rebbe Malchus says, that explains in that sikha. So possibly, this is what this whole story is. That the Ramban's teacher, this was a whole seemingly negative thing. The Ramban's teacher brought out the good from all of it. And that's through the koyach of Pnimius Satara. Pnimius Satara has the ability to do that. To overcome things that seem to be negative. And bring out that really it's not. To bring out the emes. So simply put, the Rebbe Malchus is telling us that we certainly, Hayrois we have, is to do Hidur and Torah mitzvahs. Certainly the Indian of intermarriage is something that it speaks about, and that's about Mi Yehudi. Now, in a certain year, the Rebbe Malchus says that stop speaking about Mi Yehudi, which I don't know all the details behind that. But certainly, it's something that the Rebbe Malchus says, the Indian of Mi Yehudi, and Sichas about making sure there's no intermarriage. There's a Nibui Otzum of Sichas about taking away this Gzeir of Mi Yehudi and intermarriage. It's something that the Rebbe Malchus says that certainly Leis Ata has dedicated who knows how many sichas. So the Indian of intermarriage is certainly something that the Rebbe says there's a lot of mugidik sichas about it. There's Parshas Pinchas, you can't do that. Certainly the Indian of intermarriage is something that is necessary to correct. That's obvious, and the Rebbe says clearly that intermarriage is what's holding up them. Just like the Bayis Sheni was not completed its building till Ezra separated the men from their goyish wives. The Rebbe says the same thing is the Bayis Hashlishi. The Rebbe says the equal of the binyan Bayis Hashlishi is that. So there's nothing that's gonna tell us that obviously something has to change. There's no question about it. If we say that that's the equal, we can't say it, but it's certainly going to help. And this Indian of the king having to do things in a hidden way. That the king, this is old. That's the story in the Zohar. That's the story in the Ramban. Is an Indian of mitzad, it being like, so to say, hepach hakoved, which is hard to understand exactly what that means in our case. But certainly there's a connection to this concept of being hidden. And what we can know is that
It's like, why is it so hard to understand? It's like the Menteshar Tuma. That you wouldn't have like the Melech go down to like the lowest levels of Tuma, right?
right. So I mean, I did hear from people, and I have to be honest, I was already, at least I heard myself from people. I had this fuss of giving out a lot of pictures of the Dvar Malchus, and at least upon 2 occasions, I heard with my own ears Goyim telling me that they saw the Dvar Malchus at a certain event.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, this was once in Manhattan and one time in New Jersey. And I've heard other things similar about other people, but I personally heard upon 2 occasions that Goyim saw the Rebbe Malchus at different places, and there's a possibility that the Rebbe Malchus wants to do things undercover. That's to change things, but in a way that's undercover. So we the more we're gonna do our job, we'll save the Rebbe Malchus the work, and the more that the Torah mitzvahs is a davar pasha, then that's the emphasis. Obviously, the Rebbe Malchus for the most part is madgish the asay type, and obviously for us it's also should be the emphasis on asay type. That the more asay type we accomplish in the world, and the more Torah are and mitzvahs, so then obviously the ikar is to take out the pnimis Torah has the koyach to be megal with the emes and to take away the things that seem to be hepach habracha, which it's obviously that's not really the mitzias. The mitzias is really the emes. So that's the pnimis Torah has the koyach for that, and Hashem should help that our accomplishment should give us the ability to have the strength in teaching Torah and Chassidus to Yidden and Inyan Yeshua, that we have to know as much as things are positive, just like to our dismay, it's not positive that we don't see the Malchus. It's not positive that there's a lot of people that don't know their Bechal Yidden. Yidden don't know what Tefillin is. And how could you expect a Yid to marry someone Jewish who doesn't even know what Tefillin is? Baruch Hashem, it's a native, he's going to marry a Jew. So the situation is not exactly as we would want it to be. And we have to run to do as much as we can to change the situation. And if it was that way so certainly it's not going to be that way. If the Rebbe says it's equal to the Binyan Bayis Hashlishi, just like it was equal to the Binyan Bayis Hasheni, means that the Rebbe says that's giving us already a haftacha, that it's not going to be that way. If the Rebbe says that's giving us a haftacha, that the Beis Hamidrash Hashlishi is going to be built, taking me on mamish, so we know certainly that we're like anything that's al derech says, we have a way maybe b'diavad to say that it's their tinus and nishra and I don't know what, but certainly it's going to change, and we have to have the bitachon gomor with when we speak to people that the situation is going to change, and that men are going to only marry Jewish women, and that anything that's in the wrong direction is going to easily be rectified, like the Rambam says in Noach. It's easy to rectify the situation. It's as easy.
In general or dafka regarding this?
No, the Rambam says in general. Anything that needs to be corrected is an easy thing to correct. We have to realize that these things, if the Rambam says this is an equal, so obviously the equal is not going to be anymore, right? And the equal is in a certain way not anymore if the Rambam says there's no more equal. So it's certainly there is no more Ikov, and it's certainly if there's, if we want to be Mahader and there being no more Ikov, then we could. It's certainly going to be happening also. And Bez Hashem, our goal is to see the Rebbe Malchus Sister with our own eyes, and that the Rebbe Malchus Sister feel comfortable in being with Galway, and that there's two aspects in this also. There's another aspect here which I just learned today, and we could conclude with this, which is we understand the greatness of the Rebbe Malchus Sister. It said in the Sefer Yechia Melech, it says that David HaMelech was punished, that as a result, it says in the Gemara, as a result of him asking for the Urim V'Tumim when he was not yet being king B'Poil. He was anointed to be king, but still Saul was king. And he asked from the Urim V'Tumim, which is something that only a king could do. As a result of that, Saul killed the whole Noivir HaKayanim. And it says in the Gemara that David was punished for this, that he, as a result of him, the whole year of David, the whole city of Neva Kahanim was killed. It says as a result of this, all the children of David were killed, besides her Yehu. Hashem punished him because as a result of him asking, even though he was a goyim, and even though maybe he had the authority in a certain way. And Rabbi Volba has a whole long arichos over there. What was the gather of him being king while Saul was still king? However, Hashem had already told Saul through Shmuel that he ripped away the kingship, and Hashem already anointed David HaMelech to be the new king, but Saul was still the king, and so David HaMelech was punished for asking from the Urim V'Tumim when he wasn't actually.
Why? Because it shows that like a lack of respect for the kingship too.
Because only a king is allowed to ask from the Urim V'Tumim.
Right.
And that's why Saul killed the whole year of Nebuchadnezzar, because they were murdered in Saul's Malchus, that they let David ask from the Urim V'Tumim.
So David HaMelech actually did ask for the Urim V'Tumim.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't just want to.
He actually did.
And he got an answer?
I guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the story so well to my dismay, but I think so. So I was thinking about it today, and I was learning it today. I was thinking about, what do you see? We know the relevance says in the first Sikha that's in the Dvar Malchus booklet, in the end of the Sikha, there's a long footnote over there that just like David HaMelech had two stages, that he was like in this Kufa, before he was actually king over Klal Yisrael, he was like, so to say, not completely king yet. He was anointed to be king, but he wasn't really king. And Ad Kedei Kach, he got punished for asking from the Urim, whatever, punished because as a result of asking the Urim, he killed whole city Canaan, and Saul was still B'Poil, the king. So that was the first stage, or what it says there, he was fighting wars. I don't remember the exact words over there. And the second stage is when he was actually B'Poil king. And the Rebbe says that's Al Derech, what the Rambam writes, by Mashiach also you have two stages. You have B'Cheskas Mashiach and Mashiach V'Adai. So I was thinking to myself, we know that the Rebbe Malchus is correcting everything that David HaMelech made a mistake, right? Because David HaMelech, B'Poil was not Melech HaMashiach. And the Rebbe Malchus is B'Poil Melech HaMashiach. So obviously, like Rabbi Volba writes this in about something else, the Rebbe Malchus is obviously correcting an Indian that David HaMelech had. So how is the Rebbe Malchus correcting this Indian? Of not rushing too far before you have that authority. So in Tavshin, one example maybe, don't do that. In Tavshin, don't do that. In Tavshin, non Gimel, non Dal, I'm not mistaken, they wanted to make a crown for the Rebbe Malchus, and the Rebbe Malchus didn't want the crown. They said no. That's one example. And I was thinking, possibly it's also another Indian. Because as it was going, the way it was escalating in Tavshin on Gimel, it would have escalated if they really want to make a crown for their Malchus, it would have escalated to a point, and it could have been constantly escalating giving a lot of kavod, which Dvar Malchus to the Rebbe Malchus says that, and the Dvar Malchus to the Rebbe Malchus says that it seems that we're not by that stage yet. We're not by the stage yet of having the Malchus of oil. The stage of Malchus of oil is only going to be when the Beis Hamikdash is built. When the Eibishter is going to have his Malchus, then the Malchus of the Rebbe Malchus says it will be Begoli. Until then, it's not yet the stage of it, and the ability to be, as the Yiddish saying, machnis visendik, to make yourself. What the expression is that you make yourself like part of the crowd. You're not putting yourself out. You don't want to be. And the literal translation of machnis visendik means making yourself not seen, right? Is the Rebbe Malchus is technically doing that now. That we're in a state that the Rebbe Malchus that wants to be not. It's hard to say it exactly. It's hard to express it exactly, but it's something possible. Possible is that this is the humility of the Rebbe Malchus, and not what they in English jumping the gun, so to say, not going to a stage that we're not yet. And Hashem should help that we could try to understand. We could try to, and the more we learn, it will give us an understanding. The more we learn, we'll understand. But the case, in fact, is that we need to keep to all the heroes. That's the simple conclusion of the Sikha. That we need to keep to all the heroes of the Rebbe Malchus, and especially things that the Rebbe Malchus has this big kachin, which in our times the major kach of the Rebbe Malchus is in Yoni Mashiach. And that it says at the end of the Sikha of it says that this is a very important thing now to minig Yisrael already, to learn in Yoni Mashiach, to prepare ourselves and others for the Gilui of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. This is the main kach of the Rebbe Malchus, the learning in Torah and in Yoni Mashiach. So obviously this has to be our emphasis. And the Rebbe Malchus is this makdim before that. We have to do all the Torah mitzvahs and all the Hayros of Rabbi Sim. And our Yiddishkeit, our Chassidishkeit has to be expressed in our Kitzanias, in our whole long list. We got to do everything. And we got to be with the Toikif and not give up and keep going strong. And Hashem help that we learning more and more. It's going to help us to emphasize what we need and to do what we need. Teach the Hayrat, the end of that Sikha was to teach the Goyim 7 Tzeinayach, and the more we'll be separate from them. And when it comes to marriage and when it comes to things that we're not supposed to be connected to the Goyim, that will give us more strength in teaching the Goyim 7 Tzeinayach. And Hashem will help that we should already have what it says over there, V'naru Oil Kol HaGoyim, and the Rosh HaHarim, the Beis Hamikdash will stand on Rosh HaHarim. And we should have it ready immediately that we will see the Rebbe Malchus says that, and then Hashem will give his part. Hashem should already have Rahmanis on us and let us see the Rebbe Malchus and let the Rebbe Malchus do what he really wants. Build the Beis Hamikdash, to gather the Yidden, to bring the world to recognize Hashem in the greatest way. It should be immediately. Chia Dineinu, Einu Rabbeinu, Chumsel Le'Avad. Chia Dineinu, Einu Rabbeinu, Chumsel Le'Avad. Chia Dineinu, Einu Rabbeinu, Chumsel Le'Avad. How long is it?